How do you know if you have a valid Hawaii injury case? That is the question we're going to be discussing today. For more details, if this discussion did not satisfy the information you're looking for, feel free to go to our website, click on the free advice, scroll down a little bit, and you'll come on a page that says how to know if you have a valid injury case. That, as you can imagine, is one of the most common questions we receive. It's understandable. People want to know if they have a case that's worth pursuing or not. Obviously, everybody's time is valuable. People don't like stress if they can avoid it. And it's something to decide right from the beginning if you want to pursue a case or not. If you're not going to, then it's not a lot to worry about. But if you are, then you want to make sure you get a lawyer, follow his advice, and handle everything the best way possible so that you can get the best settlement possible. So the first question is whether the accident was the other driver's fault. That is the number one question. People get hung up on their injuries, the damage to their vehicles, the attitude of the other driver, whether he fled the scene, all kinds of different things. And it's understandable. All these are factors that are upsetting and concerning, but you cannot be compensated for an accident if it was not the other driver's fault. If it was more than 50% your fault, then you do not have a valid case, right? It's probably the other way around. Then they should be making a claim against your insurance for compensation because it was your fault, not theirs. So that's something to keep in mind. It doesn't have to be 100% their fault. Obviously, a lot of cases are 100% the other driver's fault. You have rear-end accident cases. You have people running stop signs or stop lights. There are some obvious 100% their fault cases. But there are a lot also where it's kind of 50-50, hopefully more 60, 70, 80% their fault. But that's the first thing to think about. And you got to be really honest with yourself because the law is pretty straightforward. You know, people either have the right of way or they don't, right? Now, if the other person is speeding, and for example, they're speeding through an intersection and you turn left in front of them, they still had the right of way. So it's going to be more than 50% your fault. Yes, the fact that they're speeding, that's maybe going to be 10, 20, 30% their fault. But the bottom line is you have to give people the right of way. So that's just one little example. But that is the number one question to ask yourself. So be honest with yourself about that. Next question, let's say it is their fault. What are your injuries? Are your injuries serious enough to warrant hiring a lawyer, going through the stress of the process? How much are you going to get compensated, right? If you're only going to get a few $100s because you healed within a few days and you're fine, then maybe it's not worth your time and effort to, go through the process like that. So you got to consider whether your injuries are serious enough. The basic question in Hawaii is whether you have $5,000 in medical bills. That's actual Hawaii law. This basically says you cannot pursue a claim for injuries if you don't have $5,000 in bills paid by your no-fault insurance. So that's basically the threshold we go by. As long as our client has $5,000 in medical bills and it's the other driver's fault, then that's the kind of case we're going to take. All right. Maybe some of the bigger law firms don't take cases unless they know it's going to be 10, 20, 30,000 in medical bills. But for us, as long as we know we have a claim here that we're going to be able to get you compensation, then we're most likely going to take your case. So consider your injuries, consider your medical bills. That kind of goes back to the $5,000 question. But, your medical bills is a big factor. The higher your bills are, usually leads to higher settlement amounts. So that's just something to keep in mind. Next is, do you have lost wages? That also is a big factor in the compensation that you deserve. So maybe your medical bills aren't a lot, but maybe your wage loss is a lot. For some reason, you weren't seriously injured, but you couldn't work for a month. Maybe you have a very physical type of job and you just weren't able to. So if you did have a lot of wage loss, that might be a factor that will help you decide, yeah, I'm going to pursue this claim. And was there a lot of damage to your vehicle? This is a big factor that insurance companies consider because it's kind of common sense. The more damage there is, the more seriously people usually are. Now, that's not always the case. I've had clients have kind of freak injuries where there's hardly any damage to the car, yet the injuries were very serious. So there are circumstances where you can't always rely on the damage to the vehicle, but that's still something that adjusters always look at, is the damage to the cars. And the last question, which really you could almost not even think about all those questions, you could just jump to the last, is whether a lawyer is willing to take your case. That's really just take almost, you're not even thinking about anything. All you got to think of is call a lawyer, get the free consultation. If he wants to take your case, then based on this lawyer's experience, like us, we've handled hundreds and hundreds of cases for many years. So if we take your case, that means in our best judgment, we think we're going to be able to get you a settlement. Not 100% all the time. We do our best to try to take cases that we think will be a good result for our clients. Obviously, we don't get paid until we settle your case. So we do have a big motivation to get you as big of a settlement as we can. But our number one goal is to have clients that are pleased with the result. So we're definitely not going to take a case where we are pretty sure the client's not going to be happy because it was their fault and they won't get a settlement. So you could almost just rely on the lawyers 100% to let them decide for you if you have a case worth pursuing. We get people that have called 10 lawyers and they're frustrated, and why don't anyone want to take my case? And I kind of explain, I listen, of course, to all the facts, and then I kind of explain, well, this is probably why they, and us as well, are not interested in your case. And it's probably, most likely, it's going to be one of these things. Either it's not your fault, it's not their fault, or it's going to be a really hard case to prove it's their fault, because that's two different things, right? It's either their fault and it's hard to prove it's their fault. Or maybe your injuries are just very minor. Maybe you don't have hardly any medical bills. So that's my rule of thumb when people get frustrated. I sometimes just say, how many lawyers have you called? They say, only 2. I say, well, okay, well, maybe you've happened to call the 2 biggest law firms in Hawaii and they only take cases that are $50,000 or more in medical bills. All right, so I always tell people, call 3 to 5 lawyers and and maybe after 5, kind of decide, well, I guess maybe I don't have a good case. Maybe I'll try to do the claim on my own, see what happens with the adjuster. But obviously you call as many as you want. If you're 100% sure you have a good case, but the lawyers just aren't really getting it, call 10, 20 lawyers if you want. Almost all of the injury lawyers offer free consultations. So there's really nothing to lose as far as just your time and your frustration. But feel free to do that. Anyway, if you have any questions about anything I've discussed today, feel free to give me a call. Again, we offer free consultations. And if we take your case, we do not charge any fees until we get you a settlement. So feel free to give us a call anytime. I'm David Barlow, a injury lawyer here in Hawaii. We handle all cases throughout the whole state of Hawaii, all auto accident cases. Okay, thank you.